Hi, thank you for coming. So a few years ago, I got a call from a producer, and he was looking to do a cryptozoology show. And he asked me one question. He's like, so what are you good at? I mean, what do you do? I go, well, I'm really good at almost finding things. And essentially, we almost found Bigfoot, but not really. So, next slide.
Yeah, maybe there.
So this is the area. Excuse me a second. This is the area that we hit. This is southern Washington. It's about an hour from Portland, so it's really southern Washington. This is a huge area for Bigfoot sightings throughout history. Next slide, please. As you can see, Skamania County, which was only a few miles from where we were stationed, it's actually illegal to kill Bigfoot in Skamania County. It's a law. You can't, which I think should be everywhere, but that's how strongly they really believe and feel about the animal up there. The thing is, though, when we first got up there, and we found this pattern all the time. Initially, the one was to talk to us. Like, have you seen Bigfoot? A little more diplomatically, and they're like, no, nobody, we're not crazy. And then eventually people open up, and you'll find out that it's an area where there's a plethora of people have seen Bigfoot throughout their lives. Some haven't. It's, it's a kind of the luck of the draw, but you'd be surprised how many people actually out there in the woods have seen something. Next slide, please. And it has a long history in the area of among Native Americans. There's stories of a conflict with Bigfoots. In fact, they used to call them cannibals. According to local lore, Bigfoots actually used to eat natives after they killed them. This isn't actually from Skamania County. This is actually from Mongolia, which is something I'm going to link it to this area in about 10 minutes. This is from the 1800s, again from Mongolia. Next slide, please. And I'm going to give you a little bit look for what the environment looks like. This is essentially what the forest looks like. It's, as you can see, it's pretty thick, and this goes on literally for hundreds of miles. Next slide. This is Mount Adams, which is about like a mile from where we were staying. So if you look at the left of that is where the area that we had an expedition in. In fact, ECETI Ranch, I don't know if you guys are familiar with James Gilliland, he's got a ranch up there. It's got a lot of UFO sightings, including a Bigfoot sighting on the property. We visited the ranch on the second night, and it's actually right at the base of Mount Adams, which was about 5 miles from the spot we investigated. Next slide, please. This is the team. So it's myself with those ruby yellow pants. Love them because they're awesome. Next to me is the comic book artist, Avon Oeming. You may have heard him. He's been on the Jimmy Church show several times. And Taki, Soma, another excellent artist, also a comic book artist. She was part of our expedition on the second day. Next slide, please. This is Troy, our cameraman who likes to be called producer. He had a bum knee and he braved it for 2 days, even with me getting annoyed at him once or twice, and that's me holding him up. This was a spot where we found the first track, which I'll get to in a second. Next slide, please. This is 2 more members of the expedition, Rick Sinnett, the older gentleman with the beard, and his son, Brynis. Rick started a research group called SHIFT, which is in the very Fortean model. They study everything that's strange. Parapsychology, UFOs, ghosts, and he lives in the Seattle area. His family is actually 3 generations of Bigfoot researchers. His dad, Morris Sinnett, is actually pretty well known in the Bigfoot community. And Rick investigates with his dad, and Brynis, who's just turned 16. Rick called me up. He's like, can my son, come on his first Bigfoot trip because he's the next generation. Yeah, of course. And so this was his virgin trip. Next, please. And this is sort of out of order, but this is Ape Canyon. So Ape Canyon was about an hour and a half to where we were. I was hoping to get to it, but we never got around to it. Ape Canyon is famous for a famous sighting in 1924. Next slide, please, by the way. And, okay, it's a little bit out of order, but let's leave it there. So in 1924, 2 miners were in their cabin late at night in Ape Canyon. It wasn't called Ape Canyon yet. It was called Ape Canyon, And I'm going to tell you in a second why that was. At the time, it was really far from civilization, and they were the first ones to kind of mine the area. And late at night, they started feeling rocks hitting their cabin. And at first, they didn't think much of it. So the rocks got louder and louder and louder, and they started going outside, and they saw these, what they call these ape creatures. Now, the term Bigfoot didn't exist in 1924. The term Bigfoot was coined in 1958. Nobody knew what these things were at the time. There was a lot of Native Americans that knew them and had regional names for it, but they call them, like, you know, devil creatures at the time. So anyway, these guys are going outside, and there's several of the Bigfoots, according to the story, start getting closer and closer to the cabin. One guy goes back inside, gets his gun, and shoots one of them. He kills it. And then they run away. So subsequently, this area was called Ape Canyon. Now, this is the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Ape Canyon is kind of right on the base of Mount St. Helens. And when it erupted in 1980, first of all, the cabin was destroyed. No one knows where the cabin is today. But also, there was an interesting story. I was never able to verify this, but a Bigfoot body was supposedly killed with the eruption, and a team from the government theoretically came in and took it away. I've heard that story from several sources, and it's kind of in Bigfoot literature. If you're familiar with it, you've heard of it. It's never been verified, but it was in that certain area. Next slide, please. This is the two miners I was just talking about from 1924. And this was a newspaper article detailing their story. Next. This is the first day of our trip. This is the road that we were on. And so this is myself in the car, and I think that's Steve ahead driving. So this was on our way to the first spot. Next slide. So this is what first caught my attention. So we found a good spot. Like, I looked at the, geographically, at the maps like for months ahead of time. And the idea was to find an area that was close enough to civilization because we only had 3 days that we could get to, in and out, but also where sightings had occurred. And this area seemed pretty good to me. And it has everything you need. It's got running water, it's got enough resources for a big primate theoretically to live. Now, I don't think it lives in this area. I think this is on this path. It's got a fairly big range, and I think this is part of this range. If you really want to find where these animals live, and maybe a nuclear family or whatever, you have to go much deeper in the forest. And this is a bent tree that we found, and there's one track. There's the first track that we found right underneath the bent tree. Obviously, something had bent the tree over the track, and I'll explain a little bit more. The second, next slide, please. This is the first track that caught my attention. Now, as it turns out, I don't think this is a Bigfoot track. I think it's a black bear. I think it's a claw marks on the top. And the thing though, we had a bear hunter with us named Sean, which was probably the friendliest person we met all weekend, which isn't saying much, I'm gonna be honest. But, and I showed him the track, and I'm like, is it a black bear? It's like, maybe, I'm not sure. So it's still, still a slight question to it, but I tend to be conservative because when it looks like claw marks to me, probably a black bear. Next slide. You can see a little bit closer here. Next. Okay, so this is why we stopped in this area. In Bigfoot sightings, and this goes back for generations, there's a story of them bending trees, either to mark their territory or perhaps to mark a trail. We don't really know why that is. I've heard that story over and over again, and it coincides with a lot of sightings, both of just tracks and of actual Bigfoots. And this is the first tree that we saw. I believe we were driving by, and I was looking out the window. And Steve does all the driving. He's a much better driver than I am. Because I have not paying attention, because I'm looking around. So, and this is why we eventually stopped. Next, please. Now, this is the second bent tree. We found 3 of those. And mind you, the area that we had picked out was the only spot where we saw this phenomenon. This was a little bit away from the clearing. Underneath this bent tree was a series of deer tracks. And, next slide. So this is another picture of the tree. So you can see it was about, maybe the bent was about a little bit above my head. Next. Now, right across the deer tracks followed, we found this track. It's a little bit hard to tell from the picture, but up live you can see there's toes. up at the top. Now, as you can tell, there's a lot of debris, so this probably occurred before some of the debris came on top of it. But if you look at the middle, there's what looks like a little bit of a ridge. In Bigfoot, this is called mid-tarsal. It's a break, I'm sorry, yeah. So here's the idea is that the midfoot is very flexible, which has to do with the environment that it has to walk in. So when he puts his foot down, he first puts the heel down. Okay, so we estimated the track to be about 20 inches. Again, Steve's foot, 13 inches. And as you can see a little more clearly in this picture, you can see the toe tracks. Now, the mid-tarsal break. As it turns out, there's a study done at Boston University in 2008 where they figured out that a certain amount of humans, Homo sapiens, have this mid-tarsal break. It's a vestigial trait. It goes back to our ancestors that had a flexible foot so they can climb trees. But in Bigfoot, it would serve a different purpose. Like I already mentioned, it most likely it has to do with the terrain where it has to step over woods, rocks. It becomes a more efficient way to walk. But again, it's a very primitive trait in primates. Go back, next slide. This is a chimp. You can kind of see how the foot bends around the tree. That's because of that flexibility in the midfoot. Next. Now this is early human species, Paranthropus, from Africa. And next slide. This is what it looks like with hair on. Can you go back to the one before? Something I wanted to point out. Yeah, there you go. So this is one of the early species that had this mid-tarsal break. Now this species theoretically never ventured out of Africa, even though there's been some unusual bones found in Asia and Russia that are very similar to this species. This species died out about 1.5 million years ago. As you can tell, it has a sagittal crest, which would give you a conical look at the top of the head, which is something that's reported with Bigfoots and Yeti in the Himalayas. Next. So again, this is what, theoretically, what this ancient species would look like. I just wanted to kind of compare it to Bigfoot, kind of gives you a possibility. Next. This is the track that we made off that initial print, the one that's 20 inches long. Now, unfortunately, the weather wasn't that great, and I had to take the track out, the cast out pretty quickly, and it broke in half in the middle. If we left it out, it was going to rain, we would have lost the entire track. I don't have it here today. It's been cleaned in Seattle. They're going to send it to me once it's clear. Again, 20 inches long. Next track. This is the area in question, us looking for more tracks. And I believe this is me with the awesome yellow pants, Steve and Rick. You know you like him. Next. I was supposed to show this earlier. It's another picture of the bent tree that we found. Like I said, we found 3 of those kind of surrounding the area of the track. Next. This is another track. It's a little bit hard to tell from this picture, so go to the next slide. There you go. You can tell a little bit more on here. Up close, you can kind of tell that there are toes. This was found, I think, about 15 or 20 feet from the initial track. We found about 4 tracks total. And next, there you can see the toes a little bit better in this one. It's underneath the debris at the top. Next. And this is to compare it to a well-known Bigfoot track from Northern California. Next. This is an Orang Pendek track from Sumatra, which is again very similar to all the other tracks. The Orang Pendek is a diminutive Bigfoot type in a Kerinci preserve way deep in Sumatra. Next slide. This is one of the more interesting tracks that we found. This was found at about 40 feet, 50 feet from the initial track. It was on mud. You can tell it was gripping with the toes.
Oh, my bad.
And this is another famous Bigfoot track, and it's a little bit hard to tell here, but it's kind of the same phenomenon. This one was taken in mud, and it was gripping with its toes. I just wanted to kind of point out the similarities between both of these. So the theory that we had was that with the bent tree was where it was marking its trail, because underneath that was a deer footprints. It seemed to be following the deer, probably for food. And he came upon this clearing, and he kind of made a semicircle, thinking that, it's a little bit too wide open, I don't want to stay here that long. and went back into the forest. This seems to be the path the footprints were taken. It was going, like I said, in a semicircular pattern. Next slide, please. And this is kind of like the edge of the clearing that we were at. So again, my theory was that after it came out, looked around a little bit, like, yeah, you know, this is not good, out in the open. It kind of took off down right there. This is a pretty steep hill. And again, I was talking about its range earlier, and my thinking was that this is part of its range, but if you go straight down this way and you just keep going like to the left forever, you get nothing but forest for hundreds of miles. And eventually you'll hit Ape Canyon, you know, obviously if you're on foot, it'll take you a couple days, but next slide. Now, how did we get here? And this is my personal theory, which this is the route that Clovis man took about 12,000, 15,000 years ago to reach the Americas. Now, Bigfoot being a bipedal species, whether you subscribe to that it's more of an ape like Gigantopithecus, or what I pointed out earlier, maybe more closer to man as Paranthropus, it was bipedal. So it would have followed man into the North American continent and probably come down the coast and settled into the Pacific Northwest. Now this is called a Beringia land bridge. So you used to be able to walk from Siberia into North America. And interestingly today, if somebody were to ask me, where would you go if you really want to find evidence of Bigfoot, I would go to Siberia and Russia. There's more sightings there than there is in North America. And it's had along hundreds of years of history. All through, from the Caucasus Mountains, there's a small pocket there with sightings, and into Siberia, where they're called the Chuchunawa. I already showed you the picture from Mongolia, which has a long history of sightings. It's called the Alma or the Almaty in that area. Next slide. This is a dispersion of different species of man, about, you know, starting about 35,000 years ago to 100,000 years ago. The Denisovans and Neanderthals. As you can tell, it came out of Africa into Europe and eventually, you know, settled around Russia. And so in theory, this should be also the path Bigfoots would have taken to disperse themselves around the world. Now obviously today, most of these spots are extinct. But theoretically, hundreds of years ago, this could have been their range. And today, there's only small pockets, like I said, left in Asia, Nepal, I put the Yeti, Siberia, and obviously into North America, into where we were. Next slide, please. This is a picture that obviously didn't come out. It was supposed to be Gigantopithecus, which was a giant ape. It would have been about 10 feet tall if it stood on its hind legs. It lived in Nepal, Tibet, exactly where reports of the Yeti are today. All we have of Gigantopithecus are its jawbone and several teeth, so nobody really knows what it looked like and what it behaved. But it's an example of a potential ancestor to Bigfoot, and it's in the right area. Next slide. This is a cast from Russia, which, you know, sort of looks like mine, I guess. This was, I think this was from the 1960s. Mary Shapley actually was one of the first anthropologists to take interest in Bigfoot. She was ridiculed by her peers for the most part. Wrote a book, didn't sell, sold better than mine, but it didn't sell. And I think she died some years ago. Next slide, please. So this is day 2. Now, going back to Russia, a lot of bones, unusual bones, thick, robust bones have been found in caves. Now, most of those are fossils and usually attributed to, you know, some of our ancestors. But there's also a lot of sightings in that area of the Almaty as they call it, in cave systems. So the theory was that perhaps out here as well, and use a cave system maybe to get around. The whole area is littered from like hundreds of miles of caves. And eventually there were lava tubes. And so the second day we decided to go exploring the caves. You can see here, this is myself, Taki, Soma, and then Steve there. Trying to look cool. Next slide. This is what it looks like once you get inside the cave. Next slide. This is also what it looks like when you get inside the cave. Just want to give you kind of perspective. Next slide. This is the entrance to the ECETI, which is the Gilliland Ranch. Now, the story was that there's a guy named Chief Joseph, which was quite a colorful individual. And he says that one day he was on the kind of edge of property, and a Bigfoot came running and knocked him over. Now, I have absolutely no idea if this story is true or not. You know, Chief Joseph was a very nice guy, but I still can't verify some of his stories. Next slide, please. This is me reflecting in the cool pants in front of the ranch. Because, we came in, literally went there like around midnight, and we're just trying to, there was nobody to let us in, and we were calling, and one was answering, so we were out there for a little bit. Next slide. Eventually, Chief Joseph came running down and let us in, which was extremely nice because he had no idea where we were. Like Steve had called earlier and talked to us. Steve knows James pretty well, I don't. And we had talked to them. I can't remember the guy's name, but anyway. So Chief said, yeah, go ahead, you guys, just go in, just don't do anything crazy. This is the road to the ranch. As you can see, it's a lot of forest around. So this should be, if the Bigfoot sighting is real, this should be the extreme, I think, range of his territory. Next slide. And that's pretty much it. So I want to say thanks to everybody.